is Tom Worthington. I'm with the Minnesota Valley Refuge Friends group, and I'm also on the board of the Coalition of Refuge Friends and Advocates. And it's my great honor and privilege to host, at least introduce today's webinar. We do these webinars about every month on different topics of interest to friends groups. And today's topic is the status of the Blue Goose Passport. And I've got mine. I never travel without it. And we'll get the latest update on that. And Janelle Wicks will be introducing our speaker today. But before I ask her to do the introductions, just a couple of quick announcements. All of our webinars are available for viewing. They'll be recorded and they'll be available for viewing. And on the Coalition of Refuge and Friends website in the resource section, there are a number of terrific resources there available for friends groups to help you with your organization. The webinar that we had last month on the pros and cons of getting an endowment going is up and ready for viewing, so check that out if you're interested in that topic. We have a couple of other kind of informational events coming up. May 26th is our monthly share call, which is kind of a more informal conversation amongst friends members. This one is going to be kind of based on the topic of annual giving campaigns that friends groups run, and how some of them work well, and lessons learned. That's on May 26th, typically at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You can get more information about those on the Corfo website. We have a couple of other webinars of informational value coming up in June. These dates are a little tentative, so don't write them down in ink. June 10th, we are going to do a webinar on the refuge transportation bills and the different refuge road programs, how the refuge system benefits from this unusual funding source, not typical for the refuge system roads program from the transportation funding. We'll hear from service staff about how those funds are used to benefit transportation in the refuge system. And then we're also hoping to organize a webinar on the basics of refuge budgets, from development to the legislative action and enactment. That'll be coming up later on in June, the dates to be determined. A couple of award announcements,
Hey, Tom,
nominations. Yes.
you forgot one. Sometime this summer, there will be a webinar on use of AI by nonprofits.
Yeah, that'll be coming up too, how to use AI in the nonprofit world. The O'Brien Prize, which is given annually, this will be the 7th year, I believe. The Refuge Association has awarded that. The deadline for the O'Brien Prize for Refuge Friends groups that heighten public awareness of the Friends group and bring enduring value to the Friends group and the refuge system. There is an application process, and the application due date is May 30th. You can download the application at the Coalition of Refuge Friends website and also the Refuge Association's website. And I think Eden is going to be putting these web links in the chat. And then the Refuge System Awards program, Refuge Manager of the Year Award, the Volunteer of the Year Award, Employee of the Year Award, those annual awards that the Refuge Association manages are also open right now. And the deadline is in June. I can't recall June 1st. And those links to those awards are in the chat box as well. Okay, that's enough for me. Janelle, will you please introduce today's speaker on the Blue Goose Passport? Janelle is the Executive Director of the Friends of Malheur. Take it away, Janelle.
Thank you so much, Tom. Yeah, lots of really great, important stuff happening for friends. So if you're not connected and you need to be invited to a share call or you want to attend a webinar, please access the Coalition of Refuge Friends and Advocates website. The hub space is a great point of contact for getting access to all those meetings. So, like Tom said, I'm the executive director for the Friends of Malheur National Wildlife Refuge out here in rural Eastern Oregon. And I met Kristen Gilbert back in what would have been 2020 at the Public Lands Alliance trade show and convention in San Francisco. And it's really exciting to see her again today and have her on board to talk to us about the Blue Goose Passport. If any of your friends groups are at all like mine, you have people begging for these passports. And we're really excited to learn about the process that's gone into the development of the prototype for the new version and learn all about the timeline for future production of the new Blue Goose Passport. So, Kristen is the branch chief of interpretation and digital services for the Refuge system, and her team have been working really hard on this, and I'm not going to take up any more of her time. So go ahead, Kristen. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. I do need to introduce the two other co-authors, leads on this too, and preface this as we have a whole bunch of other work, but this is like, I think, the project the three of us love working on the most. So, and it's our passion project. And unfortunately, it doesn't, adhere to other priorities that are coming down from the top of us. So sometimes those overwhelm us, but I'm hoping they can come on camera and I can introduce them. And you'll hear most of the presentation will be by them. But Courtney Solom, who is within our branch, is our interpretive park ranger. So she's worked in multiple regions in the Midwest region at multiple refuges, and is been a great addition to our team for the last couple of years. And she's kind of working on the content writing aspect of it. And then the secret superhero on our team that we happen to acquire from another division. She's our multimedia fellow, sponsored through the Student Conservation Association, and she has really picked up this project and helped move it forward in ways we can't even imagine. We would be much further behind, and that's Emily Thompson, and you'll be hearing from her in a minute. I'm hoping they're waving since I don't see them on the screen.
We're
necessarily.
Here. I think maybe if we speak a little, we'll move to
okay, perfect. Yeah, there's Courtney.
Yeah, hi.
Okay. And they're going to be doing the bulk of the presentation, but I'm just going to start off with a little bit of background and a couple of acknowledgments and kind of what went into our process. And then Emily's going to walk us through the prototype that we have. So the Blue Goose Passport, which I'm sure many of you have, this is a third edition. And again, I'm piecing the history through lore. I've been with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Refuge system for 25 years. So it's more my lore of that. And then also, I think we have some founding members of the original publishing team even on the call today. So I think, again, they can correct me on the history, but this kind of was one of the products that came as we were leading up to the centennial of the Refuge system in 2003. This was published in advance with some support that I just learned from Marvin and Lee Cook, who it's amazing and a testament that all these people are still involved with the Refuge system decades later about the passion and wonder for this. So it's they kind of put out the hard fought, as we're finding this is not an easy thing to put together, even though it appears to be just a list of refuges, but you've got to organize and collate and make sure they're in the right order. So definitely a shout out to all those who were on that original team. And as you guys know, so there was multiple editions from 1999 to the last print edition was in 2017. And a lot of things happened, a big turnover in this branch specifically. And then also the pandemic and all sorts of things where printed products were on it was hard to do a lot of things, but we heard your calls to get this reprinted. It's something that's been regular of the last 9 years in this job, that this was a highly valued product. So, but we wanted to approach it in a new way with new audiences. So we did a little bit of, we decided to apply a human-centered design approach to the redesign of this product. And we kind of had a whole bunch of small groups get together and pitch new ways to approach it. So what we came up with through those pitching sessions was really trying to solve a couple problems that we have with it. It's kind of impossible. It's a lifelong for those people that like to check things off lists. Doing the Blue Goose Passport is kind of impossible. You have to hit every single one of them to check off and get stamps for every single one of those things. So we wanted to make something more manageable for everybody who likes to check off lists and complete things. So that was one of the things that went into it. We also have had a big change in what we can access and what we have the capability of providing a stamp at a particular location because of our employee capacity issues. So we're rethinking like how we do the stamping. So those self-service sites, those self-guided sites that people visit have an opportunity to get a stamp at a hub site in a more concerted fashion, and also just make it a little more flexible for and enjoyable for everybody. So those are some of the things we're trying to solve with it, but I'm going to turn it over to Emily to kind of go through how we try to solve some of those problems.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen. So I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share, and it might take a minute to get it loaded up. Yeah, Kristen introduced me already. My name is Emily Thompson. I'm a multimedia design fellow here with Fish and Wildlife through the Student Conservation Association. And just to double check, can you guys see my screen with the picture of the Blue Goose Passport slide?
We don't. I think we're seeing your InDesign screen.
Okay, let me redo my share here. Thank you for that. Let me share this way, and then I will hopefully still be able to enter presentation mode. It's loading up. Okay, and then let me see if I can switch. You guys will have to let me know. Does this go to a full screen view for you guys, or is it still the
It's a little
view?
closer. Yeah, we see it full screen without the tools.
Perfect. Excellent. Awesome. I've got the multimedia intern and I still have problems with some of this stuff. So thanks for bearing with me. But yeah, so Kristen introduced the project already and sort of explained some of what we're trying to solve. And so it's a fantastic product and people want it, people love it. And so we really tried to think about this as an opportunity to really keep that user in mind, like Kristen was saying, using those human-centered design principles, providing space to collect stamps, but also new opportunities to have things like fold-out maps for each region where people can see the sites. We have this idea of different types of visitor use, sort of informing these journey paths. And I'll speak a little bit more to those when I get to that section. But basically, those are ways that visitors can have a concrete checklist of things that they can actually check off and do at refuges. And so that encourages them to see their checklist and then look at refuges and hatcheries that they can actually go and do those activities and complete those challenges. It's about the size that we're looking at is a little larger than the old one. So I have a scale model here. It's about the size of this American Revolution passport that they did. So this gives us the opportunity to do those nice fold out maps and feature all of the sites while still having it be sort of pocket sized. So I'll just start scrolling through and talk a little bit more about what we have. We're hoping to include a nice little plastic sleeve where you can stick your federal duck stamp in there. It's like the perfect size to hold the whole thing, which is awesome. We have some opportunity to have some text on the inside covers and the back covers. Little cover photo. Oh, and I forgot the most important preface of all. This is a prototype. This is a draft. It's not copy edited yet. So a lot of this content is still going to be a little placeholder. You might see some typos, but just know that that's not how it's going to be. I'm just trying to showcase what we have so far. So the great thing with this sort of plan is we're able to have these pages where we have, content on the front, and then it'll actually fold open. So we can do like a nice regional map that shows our different areas. These almost correspond to the geographic regions that you guys are familiar with, but we just split them up just a little bit into the more areas that make a little bit more sense for somebody who might be traveling through. So I'm going to go ahead and keep progressing.
Emily, are we supposed to be seeing
And so
the
now I can
geographic
speak a
map?
little. Oh, Jonah.
Are we supposed to be seeing the geographic map?
Not
yet. I just want to make sure we're seeing what you're seeing.
What are you guys seeing right now?
We see the covers, the cover refresh Blue Goose Passport.
Let me go ahead and change what I'm doing then. For some reason, it doesn't want to let me share the presentation view, so I will just have to scroll through my documents. Okay, can you guys see where I am now?
Yes, and you might want to go back up to the duck stamp page so people can see that again.
Yep, so sorry. Let me just, no, that's not the link. Okay, whatever. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So here's the duck stamp page. Like I said, little pocket to tuck it in, space on the cover to write some more information. And then continuing on, there's the cover page I mentioned. And then here we are on that fold out page. Like I said, these pages will actually be able to fold open and you'll be able to see building up our little geographic areas. So I'll keep walking through. All right, so this page kind of gives you the idea of what we're going for with our journey paths. So like I said, we've identified a few different types of visitor use, and these are a list of sort of challenges and activities that you complete at a National Wildlife Refuge or on a hatchery. And I'll just very briefly explain some of the visitor uses we've identified, but the idea is that you can check these off as you go, so it's a little bit more interactive and you get that sense of completion. So one of our journeys is the observer, focus a little bit more around noticing nature. These are pretty general things, can be done at almost any wildlife refuge or hatchery. We have a bird watcher, and so this is for beginner birders, and the goal is to kind of attract more people into the hobby of bird watching. And then we also have a bird expert, and so this is for people who have already been birding for a while, and it really aims to sort of highlight that the National Wildlife Refuge system is sort of like the top destination to come and observe birds. We also have our road tripper. This is another key one that I'll point out. So this is more people who are like traveling around, visiting different sites. And we really want to keep this audience in mind, again, that user-centered, human-centered design when we're writing our site descriptions. So every site is going to be featured, every wildlife refuge and hatchery, ones with higher visitation. We'll make sure that we point out some of these key sort of travel destinations. So I'll show the other two that we're considering, that we have here. We have our fish enthusiast. This one's around fisher folk. We're also tying in this great program that FAC has been doing called Land a Legend, where they've identified 12 iconic American species that have hatcheries where you can actually go and visit the fish as they're being produced, and then you can also go out onto national wildlife refuges and harvest them there. So we're tying in with that program as well. And then of course we have our local. So this list sort of user case is geared towards folks who visit the same sites multiple times, sort of tapping into, it sort of taps into participation in events and volunteering opportunities and things like that, and sort of highlights those on the checklist. And then our very last one, we are sort of tying in a little bit of the semi-quincentennial celebration here with the checklist that sort of highlights the refuge's history and its place in conservation history. This one highlights a little bit more specific sites. So this one is a little more like travel checklist with some specific areas. Okay, so now before I jump into the regional sections, I just want to give you guys just a little overview of how sites are going to be featured. So again, I'll restate, all national wildlife refuges and fish hatcheries will be included in one of 4 ways. So we have 4 different tiers of descriptions. our first tier is the longest. This is going to be for sites that welcome and orient visitors. They have high visitation. They'll have about 40 words to describe top activities that visitors can do at the site, and will also include icons that represent whether you have a visitor center, whether you have paddling accessibility, camping, those sort of like high level big draws for people who are traveling. Our tier 2 is similar, but just a little bit less words. So these are for sites that maybe have a visitor center, still have high visitation, but are maybe like a satellite of another refuge. And then our tier 3 is sort of our like fun fact description. So these are sites that are still open to public access, but maybe they're unstaffed. Maybe they don't have a stamping station. And this is for like lower visitation sites, just room for like a little brief description. And then our tier 4, so these descriptions will basically just be the name of the site and the city. And so this is going to be for sites that do not have public access or they're too remote. This will include our wetland management districts, fisheries, smallest refuges, endangered species, so on. And what's exciting about this is we actually have an opportunity for visitors, since they can't collect a physical stamp for these locations, they can actually scan this QR code, go online, and do an interactive activity to sort of engage with these sites and sort of collect a virtual stamp for those sites. So I'll go ahead and jump in. I have 2 regions that I'll kind of walk you guys through that we can take a look at. The first one is Alaska. So just a little overview of how these regions are going to look. They'll be color-coded. They'll feature some checklists. And Alaska is a little different. I'll show you the Midwest section in a little bit. Most are going to be organized by state. Alaska is a bit different. It's such a huge state, so we sort of divided them into how you can access these sites. So I'll go ahead and keep walking through. And I think I got to go back up. This is why I was hoping to do my presenter view, but you guys are just getting a little bit of the behind the scenes. Okay.
Emily, there's a couple questions just to answer, so I'll just answer
Sure.
them. So one question was, will you make a distinction between urban and rural sites? And the answer, we won't have any symbology or name that something's urban or rural. Maybe within the descriptions about what's offered at that site, if it's like has good bus access or something like that, because it's an urban area, that might be something we mention. But that's not one of the things that we're doing. And then it says some hatcheries have busy visitor centers and many activities. And then we are saying yes, that hatcheries will be that tier 1, actually. No, tier 1. So like DC booth. Like DC booth is a tier 1 where they can welcome and orient visitors and have a stamp. And you actually have a couple of other items, big ticket items on the history buff list. So we're working with FAC to kind of figure out how to categorize that. But if a site can welcome and orient visitors and has some place to stamp with regular staffing, you're going to get like the more of the tier 1 or tier 2 treatment. So that's what we're thinking. But we are in very limited space. So 40 words for tier 1 might get put down to 20 words as we do some of this editing, but that's what we're starting with. Okay, go ahead, Emily. I think that answered the questions.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. So then just taking a closer look at what these regional pages look like. So we'll have a little introduction, an opportunity to do some interpretation about the region. And just as like a general design note, as you can see, we're trying to include some of these like high impact photos wherever we can, sort of tucking in this color photography where we have room for it. And then over on the other side, this is our next sort of fold out. And so this will happen for each region. On the front panel will be a checklist of the must-do. So this will be like the top activities in each region. And then that will open up to a map. And so these maps are going to display, again, the Alaska one looks a little different, but these maps are going to display all publicly accessible National Wildlife Refuge and National Fish Hatcheries. Closed sites or sites that aren't accessible to the public will still be indicated, but they just won't be labeled with text on the map, just more of a real estate thing. So then I'll go ahead and show you guys this is what the sort of stamping section is going to look like. So we've decided we moved away from having boxed in designated spots for each stamp. Because what this lets us do is this lets us give a lot more detail on those sites that have high visitation, letting those sites take up some more room, whereas some of those sites that a visitor may not even be able to collect a stamp, that can be smaller, but we still have an open area for stamping. This is also great for sites that maybe have multiple stamps or different types of stamps for the visitor to collect. There's a little bit more sort of freedom and flexibility with that. And then as you can see, these will feature their name and the city nearby, have an icon for the amenities, and these will also tie back in those journey challenges, those activities that you can do at each site. So I'll show you what a full page spread of those might look like.
I have one more question I'm going to address in this portion. Will we be able to have QR codes for each refuge on their page to point out to our website? The answer is no. I'm being we have very little real estate. So this document is like, if you think about when somebody might get a passport, it's really they'd buy it at a nature store and then it would encourage them to go to other refuges. And so this is a small sliver of what you guys offer in terms of amenities, and we're just trying to really focus on the most notable for your site. So that helps us get at these, and it's a teaser that you could easily do a Google search or something to find that refuge with more details, which we hope people do if they're planning trips. But QR codes are used a little differently. We just don't have the space, or we wouldn't have any space for stamps if we put QR codes in there.
Correct. Yeah. QR codes generally have to be just under an inch in diameter to be scannable. So that would take up a little too much space. So, okay. So you can see for the Alaska section, we're able to put in that Alaska knowledge stamp down there at the bottom so visitors can engage with some of these more remote sites. And as you can see, the text remains on the inside on the binding, and those open stamping areas remain on the outside edge. Nice little color stripe here so you can easily identify what region you're in. So I'll go ahead and continue with my walkthrough. I also prepared the Midwest section for us so we can take a look at that. This one's not going to have all the labels, but you guys have seen sort of our breakdown on this. This is just for an example. I'll move on. So same thing as before, regional introduction, nice photo, a checklist of the top things to do in that area. And here is a closer example of how some of those other regional maps will look. So as you can see, we have sites marked with all sites are marked. The sites within the region or nearby sites will be labeled. Closed sites are going to be indicated just a little bit differently. As you can see, these are all those easement refuges up in North Dakota, marked with that hollow circle instead of the filled one. And again, a lot of these icons might be subject to change, but just to give you an idea of how we're going to visually show these things off. I'll go ahead and progress. And then this is a start of our sample section. So for these regions, as you can see, we'll have them organized by state. So we'll state the state up at the top, and then begin listing our sites and including those icons for what amenities are available. Still have the open stamping area on the side. Just going to keep scrolling through these pages. As you can see, this gives us a lot of flexibility in different lengths of descriptions, which is fantastic. Helps us keep those in. I'll keep scrolling through. And again, just trying to fit in a little bit of color photography when we can. Again, these are all still subject to a little bit of tweaking and layout work as we go. Keep coming through. And so here's an example of a tier 4 site, just with the name of the site and the city that it's in. And then at the end of each region, there'll be an opportunity for regions that have WMDs or easement refuges or other publicly inaccessible sites those will be included in this sort of knowledge stamp here. All right, so that is all of the layout I have prepared for us to look at. So do we have any other questions we wanted to answer, or anything else we wanted to talk about?
I'll answer a few more questions in the chat.
Sure.
The refuges, so every section is a little bit different as we've gone through these, but generally for each regional section, it'll be alphabetized by state and then by refuge. But what we're discovering, like Oregon Coast Refuges, for example, that's a series of closed refuges, but there's a lot of viewing visitation from the shore. And so as people look out, we want to make sure that those are next to each other in the book and that they know where they can get a stamp if they look at those refuges from afar. So there's some different situations where it won't be completely alphabetical, but in general, it'll be alphabetical by state and it'll be alphabetical by region. And then I'm guessing, Emily, this is stressing that this is a mock-up. So anything you see in the Midwest section is not final copy.
Correct, yeah.
We're still working on the data there. So if you see an error like Millsax Refuges is a closed refuge. Oh yeah, so Courtney put in, we included because it's the smallest refuge, and trying to get those like fun facts in there as well, even though people wouldn't be able to get a stamp. Then, so back to, is there a way you can zoom in on the icons next to the individual refuges? Yes. Where the visitor center and the auto tour route?
Absolutely. One moment.
I want to stress something on that. So what we're really trying to offer within the booklet is some symbology that helps people know that they can visit that place and they will get to a human. And so one of the biggest things we're working with all the field stations now on are making sure that their visitor centers are indicated whether they have something open. And that's going to be like a little symbol. And then there's two other symbols we'll be using. Well, an auto tour route, which we want to feature auto tour routes because those are fun for road trippers just to kind of quickly do. And then paddling and trails are the other two symbols we're going to use, but we're going to be more selective about that. We're really focused on, like, if you have a designated paddling trail, and then you can get resources to rent paddles and that kind of stuff nearby. So with those other symbols, we're not just putting that on everyone's. We just want to highlight the places that it makes the most sense. And the same with more like a hiking trail, because most refuges have nature trails, but we want to just within these symbols, we want to be more discreet about that, mainly from space saving as well, because we have to get a lot of long names in here in a lot of ways. So, Kathy Vance about the visitor centers and trails. We're still working with the regions. We set a deadline of the end of June-ish to work with the regions and field stations to validate your visitor centers and your trails. We just debuted this at an internal meeting last week, and we're working with your regional folks to figure out timing on that. But everybody will once we kind of get all the data together, we'll get this printed so people will be able to see what it looks like before we go to final print, and there'll be a review so you can validate the information in here. Price point. This is a prototype, so we'll actually be self-publishing it and using some money to do that. And so I think the price point we're going for is what the Park Service charges for their smallest one, which is this one, like a more of a 17 to 19. We're really just kind of testing out this new prototype and all those kinds of things. So we'll probably take a loss on it in this first go around, but we're kind of working on that as well. So that's availability over time. Again, passion project. So we haven't set any deadlines. We did set a very aggressive deadline of May, but lots of things have come up. So I think we're looking more at the end of the summer to debut it at our August VCE workshop. But especially if we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to review their sections, and that takes time, especially coming up on a busy field season. And love the ideas that people are sharing for sure. We're just hopefully we have to fit it in a very short, like this is used to what it used to be, and we're going down to something more like that. So even though we went a bigger size, so we're really trying to economize space and time. And so we'll see how much we can add afterward. So other question, like what often happens when you go to print pages are out of date? Are you planning on keeping one online with current info? I think what we're trying to do is pick things that don't change over time, right? Like I think we also have the problem of adding refuges to the refuge system, which happens all the time as well. Not as much anymore. So I think as you do an update to this, there will be an update every 5 years, but we're really trying to just go back to like what doesn't change over time. And then we have, will amenities only list those available through the refuge, or we would be able to I think no, this is no commercial listings, especially since we're self-publishing with the government self-publishing it. But again, this is a prototype, and in the future, like I envision that we do not self-publish it and we do something more like the Park Service does, where Eastern National publishes their passport booklets and does all the distribution and fulfillment for the nature stores. So we're trying to think about how that might work in the future, because we just don't have that capacity internally to self-publish continually, and fulfillment's a huge problem. We've lost in the past. You guys have ordered these from our fulfillment center, but we're actually losing the contract on our fulfillment center at the end of this year. And so we're still trying to figure out some of those things. Again, we're just doing the basic information. Courtney, do you want to talk a little bit about the text and the regional overviews and how we went about that?
Yeah, for sure. Emily, if you could go to the start of either Alaska or the Midwest, I can kind of talk about how we put that together as we introduce each region. So each region will have 3 paragraphs. It'll have the region, which doesn't necessarily correlate to the Fish and Wildlife Service regions. Some of them do, but in some cases, it is different than the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regions. So, for example, Region 1 having the Pacific Islands, that is essentially split into 2 because the islands will be in their own section with the Caribbean islands and the Atlantic. So just to note that. Then you have an introductory paragraph about the ecosystems, the landscape of that region. And so just introducing what's special about that area. So in the Midwest, the large rivers that run through the Midwest are featured, and then their importance for migratory flyways. The second paragraph relates to birds in some way, likely migration, featuring heavily as the importance of the wildlife refuges in that region, and then any bird species that are iconic, like sandhill cranes, staging throughout Nebraska and Kansas. And then the final paragraph of the region is some sort of wildlife spectacle or a wildlife story. So, for example, in the Southwest, we're talking about the desert pupfish, I think desert hole pupfish, that are endemic to, the small potholes of water that are in the desert there. Or in the Caribbean, the leatherback sea turtles. So we have, specific features of one species or a category of species for that last section. And then I can talk a little bit about the station profiles a little bit more as well. So as Emily was scrolling through, you probably saw some bolded text. Sorry, I wasn't listening super closely because I was answering questions on the side. So I don't think you mentioned this, Emily. Stop me if you already did. The bolded text featuring some different activities that people can do. And so those come back to the journeys that we introduced at the beginning of the book. So those journey lists for the road tripper, for the bird enthusiast, the fish enthusiast, and the bird nerd. So those relate back to those activities And then kind of the most iconic things that you can do, or the biggest draw. So if there's a national scenic byway that goes by a wildlife refuge, or there's a large, so like the Behold a Giant here for Sherburne, there's the 30,000 sandhill cranes staging there, something that's drawing people to come to that refuge. So really iconic things. Or a large trail system like Minnesota Valley having 45 miles of trails at the refuge. And then again, we are having each of the stations or somebody in the region verifying all of the data that we're putting into this. Either they're providing it in the beginning, or if we're putting it together for them, they're verifying it before we go to publish. So we'll make sure everything's accurate.
But that's where we're at. Again, this only looks like it's closer to done because of Emily and her amazing graphic design work on this. There's a lot of writing that's involved and a lot of coordination with the field stations. So this looks closer to done than it is. So our timeline for publication is shifting. We are hopefully to make this breakthrough with these spreadsheets and this coordination with all the stations in June. So like we're using the month of June to really nail down how the different stations should be featured. And then from there, we've done a lot of research on what we need to get this into the government printing office and things like that. So, but those will come into play. So my new deadline and in my head is August. And we'll also be sending, there was a question, we will be looking for beta tester, particularly stations that want to sell these, and even there might become a little like QR code survey we have where we try to get some reviews from customers that buy them, so we can get some feedback on how it's working. So there'll be that route where we're gonna sell to friends nature stores at like a wholesale cost that makes sense based on the cost of the last Blue Goose Passport. And then the next one is coming up is where we really want to dig into the birding community, particularly those expert birders that love refuges as it is. And so we'll be looking for some birding influencers, maybe that we would send them for free, and maybe asking you guys to, like your hardcore checklisters. Cynthia Martinez, who's probably our biggest completionist, is also getting her own version of this. But if you have those folks those super fans a little bit, again, we're moving away from the classic old version of it. So it's definitely different, but we're hoping that it'll appeal to a broader audience and bring in some of those people that might not know about refuges as much and become interested. And also has things for the super fans in there too. Very niche. Yeah, we could even put, I think the comments about the history of the Blue Goose, like coming from Ding Darling, like maybe there's something specific we say at Ding Darling, and then the Rachel Carson quote maybe for Rachel Carson Refuge. So there's some ways we can bring in some of those facts as well about the refuge system, but it's kind of where we're at on it. But we're excited and passionate about it. And so the next steps for, hopefully we'll get to the Corfa group, are some kind of interest form if you want to be the beta testers, and how many you might order. And, maybe more about the price point and things like that once we get more of those details worked out. Tom and Janelle, I think that's our presentation.
Yeah, what a job. That's incredible. You guys, your team is just doing great work. And I know that it's so deeply appreciated by all of us in the field, that our inboxes are constantly being asked where they can find a Blue Goose Passport. And so we're excited to be able to share with them that it's going to be better than they could ever imagine, the next version. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us all today. Thank you for the time you're putting into this product. And yeah, for the just the work that you're doing on behalf of the refuge system and hatcheries. So valuable. Um, it does not look like there are any other questions. You guys did such a great job covering those questions in real time. And so if anyone wants to pop a question in the chat real quick, otherwise we're gonna let these fine people go back to doing their good work. And
So
then
I want
we'll have a
to
few
add.
wrap-up notes from Tom that we want to share about some call to actions and some other advocacy related topics that we know that our friends are going to want to know about.
So yeah, thank you, Janelle and Kristen and Emily. Terrific job. Remember, this is not like a field guide to the refuge system. Everyone wants to put everything in, and it's amazing what you are able to squeeze in these slim pages. Fantastic. And I also want to
Thank
note
you.
that kind of the ring binder, the wire binder, I think is going to be much easier to handle and hopefully make the books last a little bit longer. So I'm very excited to see the progress you've made. And let's see, I had one question. It looked like the regional map. Of course, this is all draft, but did I miss a new region in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas? Did I miss that memo?
No, no, no. So yeah, we just split the Mountain Prairie region into two to have the prairies together in the profile. Just, in that the first and third paragraph talking about the species and the ecosystems, it just worked out better to have the prairies and
Okay,
the
that's fine.
Right.
Of course,
We're
those used
also
to be
not
part of
calling them.
they used to be part of Region 3, those states. So I was thinking it would
We
be an
considered that
easy.
at one point as well.
Again, we couldn't fit things on the map. The
I,
mapping dimensions. But Tom, we also one thing we want to stress is these are not organized by Fish and Wildlife Service regions. They're organized by geographic areas.
Very smart. Very smart. I get that entirely. I didn't see any other question. A lot of friends groups are volunteering to be beta testers, and I think if you put the call out, you'll get a lot of that. Um, so unless there is another question, it's fine. Kristen, if you and Emily want to bounce off, because we're going to talk a little advocacy, and I don't want to tarnish your reputation with.
It's good. Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for all your support of this project, and I know you guys are really excited about it. We are too. So we'll hear
Before
from
we
us
hop
soon.
off, I've been trying
Okay.
to pull like, hey, I want to be a beta tester, or hey, I have this comment. If something else comes up, just let us know so we can reach out to those that we need
Oh,
to.
let's put our email in the chat before we leave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and we generally facilitate an after webinar email that will go out to folks, and so we can include your contact information in there. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll have no shortage of people wanting to stick their
Probably
nose into your
probably more than
business.
you want.
Okay, bye guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Courtney.
much,
Emily.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. So I just want to remind everyone that there are kind of three important pieces of advocacy work that the Refuge Association is hoping friends groups get involved with. One is support for an increased budget, base budget for the refuge system. There's fact sheets about that. There's a fact sheet about the transportation bill and reauthorization of it, and hoping that the refuge system gets a built-in inflationary clause like the other land managing agencies do. And then the third fact sheet, Eden, help me out. This is on,
Great American Outdoors Act and the
thank
legacy.
you. And congratulations to 96 friends groups signed on to the support letters that came out from the Refuge Association to the appropriators. And we're hoping that makes a difference. The fact sheets, Courtney, Emily, Eden, have you loaded those?
Yeah, so everyone can access the different advocacy alerts in the chat. That also includes the fact sheets that the Refuge Association did along with those advocacy alerts. So
Okay, okay. All right. Um, any questions about any of that?
Well, I will
This,
just add to what Tom is saying that if you are a friends group that is not signing onto those advocacy alerts because you are not getting the invitation to do so, please go to National Wildlife Refuge Association and sign up for receiving those emails. The more of us that sign on to those, the better. It strengthens and exemplifies our collective voice.
And information about how to be a good advocate for your field station, it is in the resource center of the Corfa website. Summer is a great time to invite your member out to your facility or their staff, local staff, national staff, whoever you can get out to your field station. Start building those relationships if you haven't already. Very important. This is going to be a critical year, I think. So with that, next up is the share call on May 26th, and then a couple of webinars in June. Watch for those dates and sign up. And with that, anything else, anyone? Okay. Well, have a great afternoon and thanks for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eden, for your support.